I understand the criticisms of the Electoral College in that it overwhelmingly emphasizes states like California and Texas and Florida and New York. But the issue is that states like West Virginia, which is where my family comes from, basically wouldn't have a vote based on their population density if it weren't for the Electoral College. I think West Virginia has three electoral votes or two, something like that, barely none, but it's something, which means that even the small population of a state like West Virginia, which are predominantly very lower class, but working class white people and lower class black people, their votes wouldn't mean anything if it weren't for the Electoral College. And the Electoral College allows for those people who are in many other ways, in ways that are forgotten by the government at large, uh, given some level of acknowledgement and voice within the government system that they wouldn't have based just on their population density alone.
Mm-hmm. Well, my centrist take on it is that the Electoral College, we should keep it, but the vote should be split for each state depending on how the vote goes. It shouldn't be winner take all per state.
That's not necessarily bad. That
So,
probably is.
Yeah, there we go.
That, yeah.
Would that still? My whole thing is just looking from the broader view. Just when you have a split decision, it makes it hurts the credibility of the election. Like when the Electoral College decides someone different than the popular vote, it screams unfair on its face. So I don't know if that change to the Electoral College will solve that problem, but for me, that's the problem to be solved. Like there shouldn't be this split decision thing.
But direct democracy is mob rule, essentially.
Well,
right?
I understand the arguments. Yeah.
You're just saying it's, and I agree. If every election now on is, one side wins popular vote, the other side wins the Electoral College, it's going to create a huge rift perceptually in the country that I don't know how to bridge that divide.
So you're saying mob rule is bad. I agree, but also like elite rule is bad too.
And what the Electoral College does is actually prevent against elite rule, because otherwise, who will dominate the election? California and New York State. They will dominate every single election, pretty much.
But
they already have
a
major
vote,
advantage in the Electoral College. They have the popular vote, and they have an enormous advantage in the Electoral College.
No, I don't like giving the wokesters the advantage. I don't like that. I'm telling you.
The Electoral College is a more balanced way, because it also gives a vote and a voice to small states like West Virginia and South Dakota that otherwise, given their small populations, would have no vote comparatively, right? So even though because there's no way, otherwise you would have to say that we're going to majorly disenfranchise voters in California and New York because we all know how they're going to vote.
Well, how do you make the argument though that 3 million people who voted one way are basically disenfranchised because the popular vote is not accepted? I mean, what's the argument there? What's the argument that the smaller number of popular voters should lose the election? What's the argument there?
Well, it's a democracy, right? We are saying that. We're
Give me an argument.
Actually, right?
Give me the good argument that sounds fair.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well, I'm saying
as to why you're arguing, I think, in favor of direct democracy, and that the most majority of people should be able to dictate what the entire country does. But the fact of the matter is that the United States is an incredibly diverse country. It's diverse in race, it's diverse in class, it's diverse in jobs, it's diverse in culture, and all of these things. That's why the Electoral College, I believe, was put in place. It's because what people will vote for and why they vote for somebody in New York State is not the same reasons for which someone will vote for people or vote for things in South Carolina or in South Dakota or in Oklahoma or whatever. And the Electoral College, as flawed as a system as it may be, gives an opportunity for everyone to have some kind of semblance of an equal opportunity to affect the election, even if it's not on paper direct democratically equal, right? But it allows everyone's voice to be heard in a way that
it doesn't though. 3 million Americans don't get their voice heard. Like I don't understand how you can say that.
What do you mean? I'm so confused.
They're saying the popular vote. They're saying in the last election, Hillary Clinton won by 3 million votes. So Donald Trump got 3 million less votes and won the election because of the Electoral College. I'm not saying that that's unfair because obviously the rules of the game are the rules of the game when you engage in the game. And in that election, obviously it's the Electoral College. I just don't see how it's sustainable over multiple elections, especially if that gap continues to widen. Like if we go 3 elections in a row where the popular vote was different than the Electoral College outcome, I don't see how you make a case that that's fair. I'm with you. I want you to understand I'm 100% with you. Like I'm terrified of California and New York, which are cultural, like swimming in wokeness culturally, who like I don't want them to have power whatsoever. Like it's probably good that the Electoral College, this institution that's been around forever, is saving us from that now. Like even if it is. But at the same time, I just don't understand that. It's the credibility of the election. I don't know how you walk out and say, yes, the popular vote was this and the Electoral College decided it this way and make a credible case that that's a fair election. I understand what you're saying, Aydin. You're saying that the smaller rural areas have to have a voice. Right now, they have an outsized voice of the cities. And if you want to split it up, city versus rural, that's fine, but what is the argument for why they should have an outsized voice over the city people?
Do you think it's an outsized voice? Because, for example,
if
the state of Kentucky
they can win
is
by
4
not
million people.
getting, if they can win an election without getting the popular vote, yes, by definition, it's an outsized voice.
We're a representative democracy and a republic.
No, I don't want to.
So
I don't want to argue
like,
terms. I don't want to argue
I know.
definitions. Okay.
I'm not arguing terms. Hang on. I'm not arguing terms. It would be like saying that we wouldn't necessarily want to elect representatives because they don't represent the desires and needs and wants of every single American who voted or didn't vote for them. So the reason for the Electoral College is so that, for example, like, okay, so Hillary technically won by 3 million people. Mm-hmm. That's the entire state of Kentucky, and a little bit less than that. But it would be as if to say that maybe the state of Kentucky's vote just shouldn't exist. Okay. Right. So Kentucky and West Virginia, which is only, I think, 2 million people, maybe not even that their votes basically just get erased off the map because there's that many people in California who are culturally and based on cultural norms and based on the social propensities of California on what's socially acceptable. It means that there's other states that may have many other reasons. And West Virginia is an excellent example because West Virginia voted blue for 50 years. It has voted consistently blue. It only ever voted not blue for Trump, basically. I think they did vote against Obama the second term, but that was it. It's a state that has been hardcore blue for 50 years because they were a union state. And so I see it. I understand that to say it's wrong, technically, the majority of the American people voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So therefore she should be president. But I'm
not saying that. I'm not saying
I know,
that at all.
That's the argument, right?
Yeah,
I know,
that's the argument that they're making. My problem is that, like, it on its face, it seems like a credible argument.
Sure. She should have won based on pure direct democracy. But does that represent the aggregate of all of the people in the United States in terms of their, and again, this is the problem with the fact that we are a very diverse nation. California and New York are these two outliers that have, very woke policies. But here's the thought experiment. Let's flip it on its head. Let's pretend that, I don't know, Texas and Oklahoma are the states with the largest, or what's a really red state? I don't know. There's 2 red states, because Texas isn't anymore. There's 2 red states, and they have the largest populations. Would people, I think, overwhelmingly support the idea that just because red wins via pure population, that means that the states should not all be equally represented or proportionally represented, which is what the Electoral College does, proportionally be represented within the totality of the final vote. And I think that's where you get people on that. Not in terms of, I know you guys probably, as you said, you agree that Hillary Clinton shouldn't have won. But if we imagine the reverse, wherein there's 2 states and they have massive populations and they only vote red and they vote red on everything, they would control the entirety of our democracy. And that's just not fair for every other state. which does have its own politics, its own economy, and economic issues, its own, problems and concerns.
No, I agree with you there. Like the structuring the system is essential.
I think that's something that we have to agree with as a part of the United States being a union. We're going to have to make compromises in that.
Would you support this split going on for 5 elections in a row, where the popular vote was substantially higher than the electoral college vote, and every single time, 5 times in a row, the candidate with less votes in the popular vote won the election? Do you think that's a sustainable thing, a sustainable institution?
Sustainable in terms of people not revolting?
Yes.
No, people.
Yeah.
Revolt.
Okay. So then why? But why are people revolting? Why would people revolt?
Because, well, this is an interesting idea, right? Have you noticed the current trend of huge amounts of people in California who are moving to Texas?
Yes,
they're going to switch to Texas hard blue.
Really?
Okay. And I think that's
really. I think they're abandoning.
Yeah,
I think they're abandoning California because they're sick of California going blue. I think they might make Texas even redder.
No, I think they are 100% sick of California, but it's sort of like, oh man, we've ruined this.
Time to
There's
move on.
There's some free real estate over there,
Maybe.
But that's not going to change. The majority of because California, besides the north of it, is so blue that I don't think it's going to flip. Even if it doesn't matter if Joe Rogan and Tom Segura move to Texas, it doesn't matter in terms of the voters in California who will continue to vote blue. But it's going to draw, I think, a lot of blue voters along with them who go like, oh hey, yeah, I hate California too. I hate all of the policies that we've enacted here, and I'm going to go to Texas and vote for the same policies. And I it's such a strange, self-fulfilling, or what would you call it, cyclical.
Well, people don't pay attention.
Kind
to
of
the
insanity. No,
the cause and effect thing escapes them. Well, it sounds like you
guys
agree
voted
with me
for this,
somewhat.
And now you're mad about it.
It sounds like you agree with me somewhat about this. Like the only reason I bring it up, and like I say, I understand the pros and cons. The huge con for me is that it strains the credibility of our elections. And I just, when we're at a moment in our history where all of our institutions are straining their credibility, the media specifically, like this whole podcast that we're listening to just screams how much the credibility of the media has been strained. I don't know if one more institution can handle the straining of that credibility. And it's such an important argument. I understand that both there's an interesting case. There's a case to be made on both sides, but I feel like that dialogue needs to be had sooner or later, because I don't know if we can handle 3 elections where it's this split decision in a row. And it feels like this Tuesday we might be looking at that exact same thing for the second time in a row. Like this has happened 5 times in the nation's history, and 2 of those times are in my lifetime. If it happens 6 times and half of them are in my lifetime, we're dealing with some issues here.
I think that I mean, I understand the concern. I think you're probably right that it already has caused outrage at the idea of the Electoral College and why it's put into place. And all I can say ultimately about that is that it's a very the people who hate the Electoral College, not everybody, but the hatred towards it and the fact that it kept Hillary Clinton from winning, and that it might keep Joe Biden from winning, comes from coastal elitists who do not really think that the votes of people in West Virginia should matter to the same degree that theirs do. And the Electoral College is flawed. It's not a perfect system.
I don't understand that argument.
Well, it's not a perfect system.
Well, if
what would be the alternative? Is there an alternative that you would propose to the Electoral College?
Well, I don't have it.
I don't
That's
know.
why
I
I'm
don't
having
have a
this
good idea.
conversation. I don't have a good idea
I don't know
either. But
either.
I mean, I started
My
reading.
alternative was the best alternative. Okay?
Let's hear
No,
it. What
great.
is it?
I told you to split up the Electoral College votes by the proportion of the state. Don't make it winner take all.
Well, that would be a good
I think that
tweak to see where we're at. I wonder if that'll solve the problem that we're talking about.
I have no idea if that would actually have changed.
Yeah, exactly. If we
it would have a major effect on California. That would
Yes,
have a
that's
major
true.
effect on California.
Oh,
North
yeah,
California,
yeah, yeah.
NorCal goes red.
We have
Right,
a lot of
right.
a lot of electoral votes. We have a lot of counties in California that are solid red.
I think the real issue here is I understand that you want to have some sort of balance so that the larger, more populous states don't completely dominate. So you have to give the smaller states a little bit of like a leg up, which the Electoral College does. But the same token, the thing that I think you're really concerned about, Adam, is that nobody wants to feel like their vote is just thrown into the trash can. And I think the
Exactly.
way, and I think the way the current electoral system is you do feel like your vote's in the trash can. If you're in California and you vote red, then fuck your vote. And if you're in a red state and you vote blue, same exact thing. And nobody wants that feeling that their vote doesn't matter.
Yeah,
No,
it's
and
true.
without the electoral college, it will be that feeling too. People in West Virginia
Right.
will go, "Well, why the hell should I vote? Doesn't matter how my state goes if there's no electoral college. It doesn't matter because my state is so low populous that it's pointless to vote whatsoever." And I think it will inspire anti-democratic ideas. It's like, why vote? It's just this is how the things are going to be. New York and California will dominate everything based on their population levels alone.
Mm-hmm.
And it will encourage people to not vote and to not engage in the
I
democratic process.
I don't. That wouldn't happen though, Aiden, if Sitch's tweak came into play because
No, she's talking about if
California.
you just got rid of the Electoral College. Like
If you just got rid of it,
No, I'm not.
I think Sitch's idea
By no
is
means,
probably a
I'm
good
not
one.
advocating to get rid of the Electoral College. The Electoral College is part of our system, and some radical change like that very quickly. I mean, I'd has like. I think the wokesters would take control immediately.
Well-
We'd all be in deeper trouble than we are with this
Right.
credibility issue. So
And also, it's like, wouldn't it require a constitutional amendment to change it anyway? So, I mean, the chances that happen.
yes, yeah, no.
Right, it was just a theoretical. So,
Right.
But if
I think
California's
we need to keep it.
if California's electors were split somewhat evenly, then I think people would be more apt to think that was a fair and credible process. But I don't know that it would solve the popular vote dilemma. So
I'd be on board with that, though. I think that I don't remember how many votes California has, a significant number.
Right.
But if California is allowed to have that numbers and they split it up proportionally based on, 30% of the people in NorCal vote red, maybe probably not even that many, 20% or whatever.
what
That's
are
the
you
total
talking
vote.
about? Northern California is totally red. San Francisco
But I
is
mean,
the
as
only
a total
blue
California
county.
population,
I think-
20% of California's total population.
I think the electors
Is it
would
more than
be-
that?
The electors would be close to evenly split in California. It's
No,
I
so
think
in
Go ahead.
2016, it was 61% for Hillary, 31% for Trump.
In
So, and
California?
that's- Yeah, and
Oh,
then
I said
California
30.
has.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
You're close. And they have 55 electoral votes, so that's how they would be split up.
so they would be split. Yeah.
55.
Yeah.
Well, you
55,
might have
that's
a lot
huge
of
amount.
you might have a lot of Republicans in California that don't vote because they just always know they're overwhelmed by the
true.
blue voters.
That's
So
true,
they
yeah.
might
Yeah.
actually step up and start voting because then you would have a competition between the 30 and the 60% that there was some mobility there. Yeah.
Right. And also the candidates
I-
would feel like, like the Republicans for president's never gonna go campaign in California because it's a waste of time.
Yeah,
But
we
if
never
they could
see
pick
the
up votes
candidates.
there, then they'd actually care.
Yeah.
I think proportionalist system of votes, of splitting them up, actually is a really good idea because it would allow people to feel as if their votes have weight. So that, like you said, Adam, is that like, well, maybe Republicans in California would vote instead of just being like, why waste my time? And even in small states where Democrats probably feel like there's no possibility for them to win in those states, that's probably a more fair system to do it proportionally.